Protesters gathered outside the Supreme Court were seen taking abortion pills ahead of the nation's highest court hearing arguments over the Mississippi law challenging Roe v. Wade. Abortion pills forever, the protesters repeatedly chanted, according to footage posted by Aaron Matson on Twitter Wednesday morning. And then they, in fact, we have the video. They were out there chanting, standing in front of a sign that says, "We are taking abortion pills forever." And then there were 4 women who pull out a pill and take it. Let's play that video. Abortion pills forever. There we go. Now, this is evidence again that the safe, legal, and rare days are long behind us. I mean, long behind us. They've been behind us for a while. And the great thing is that even aside from whatever the decision ultimately is, Roe has already been exposed due to how it was defended by the liberal justices yesterday. There's a reason why the left would prefer not to debate this topic at all. I mean, they want to talk about this topic, talk about it as in scream slogans in your face, but they're not interested in a debate because when they debate it, you end up with Justice Sotomayor, who humiliated herself repeatedly yesterday during the deliberations and exposed the pro-abortion side for the vacuous, poisonous nonsense that it is. Case in point, here she is claiming that unborn children are brain dead. Listen.
Virtually every state defines a brain death as death. Yet the literature is filled with episodes of people who are completely and utterly brain dead responding to stimuli. There's about 40% of dead people who, if you touch their feet, the foot will recoil. There are spontaneous acts by dead brain people. So I don't think that a response to by a fetus necessarily proves that there's a sensation of pain or that there's consciousness.
Dead-brained people is how she describes a child in the womb. The problem is that the word dead means literally no longer alive. That's what dead means. That's the dictionary definition. Death, it's also the medical definition. Death is the stage you enter into after your life is over. Okay? If Sotomayor is suggesting that unborn children are dead from conception, then, well, they cannot be dead because they were never alive, according to her. By definition, a thing which has never been alive cannot be dead. The point is that if she believes that the unborn child has never been alive, then she cannot say that it's dead by definition. This, of course, leaves her with the major problem of figuring out what sort of state a person can be in where they are neither dead nor alive. Now we're in the realm of, vampires and zombies, I suppose. The other point is that if unborn children are dead, why do you need the abortion? The abortion is procured precisely to cause the living child to become a dead child. If he's already a dead child, what role does the abortionist play? Why are we even talking about this? And by the way, how do we distinguish between like a miscarriage and a healthy child if they're all dead? When a pregnant woman goes in for her appointments, throughout the pregnancy to get sonograms and check on the child, check on his health, what are they looking for? How can they assess the health of a dead creature? It's absurd, and yet this is a Supreme Court justice saying this. Here's one other difference between an unborn child and a dead person. The dead person will never not be dead. Now, I can't believe I have to explain this to a Supreme Court justice, but I do. So a dead person is always going to be dead, at least from a physical perspective in this life. From a scientific perspective, death is final. Dead people don't grow or develop into living people. They don't grow or develop at all. They decompose and disintegrate. Yet, whatever you think of the unborn child in the womb, there is no question that if he is healthy and left alone in that environment, he will be born and become the sort of person that even Justice Sotomayor would affirm as living. Justice Sotomayor is a living person right now herself. Despite all appearances, she is not technically brain dead. though maybe perhaps close to it. And yet Justice Sotomayor was at one point an unborn child. If I were to trace the chain of Sotomayor and follow her back in time, eventually I would get to the point where Sotomayor was a baby in the womb. So there's an unbroken chain of selfhood connecting the Sotomayor of today to the Sotomayor in the womb. If she's a living person now, she must have been a living person then, because dead people don't become living people. It makes no logical or scientific sense to say that any living person today was, at one point in their past, a dead person. She also makes the claim that the unborn child isn't conscious. Now, she can't actually know if that's true, of course. We don't understand almost anything about consciousness, what it is, where it comes from. And in any case, why should life and consciousness be conflated? These are not the same thing. Who says that all living things must be conscious? Who decided that? I mean, technically, we don't even know if non-living things are unconscious. There's a whole branch of philosophy, a fringe branch, granted, and silly, but still, called panpsychism, which claims that consciousness is a fundamental fact of reality and that all matter has some amount of consciousness. Now, that, of course, is almost certainly not true. My point is just that consciousness is a philosophical discussion, first of all, not something the Supreme Court needs to rule on, but also mysterious. We don't know anything about it. You can't use it to justify killing babies or anybody. If consciousness is simply self-awareness, though, the awareness that you are a self, the experience of being a self, if that's what consciousness is, then perhaps the unborn child has not yet developed that capacity. But then again, the infant outside of the womb doesn't have that capacity either. Whatever the case, however much consciousness they do or don't have, what we know for sure is that it's a temporary situation. Humans grow in self-awareness as they get older and develop. Are we saying that it's permissible to kill temporarily unconscious people? Well, that ought to make you pretty uncomfortable when you go to sleep at night and lapse into a state of temporary unconsciousness. It's all absurd and only gets worse from there. Later, Sotomayor makes the claim that the pro-life position is entirely a religious position. Listen to this.
How is your interest anything but a religious view? The issue of when life begins has been hotly debated by philosophers since the beginning of time. It's still debated in religions. So when you say this is the only right that takes away from the state the ability to protect a life, that's a religious view, isn't it? Because it assumes that a fetus is life at when? You're not drawing here. When do you suggest we begin that life?
Your Honor, aside from...
I'm putting it aside from religion. When does the life of a woman and putting her at risk enter the calculus? Meaning, right now, forcing women who are poor, and that's 75% of the population, and much higher percentage of those women in Mississippi who elect abortions before viability, they are put at a tremendously greater risk of medical complications and ending their life, 14 times greater to give birth to a child full term than it is to have an abortion before viability.
On second thought, she really is doing quite a lot to prove that a person can be alive but brain dead at the same time. I mean, these arguments that she's putting forward are about as sophisticated as the kind of thing I read from leftists in my YouTube comments, and will probably read after this show. She's building a rhetorical castle of wrongness, brick by brick, one wrong statement after another on top of each other. She says that the view that fetuses are living is religious. Well, no, it's not. It's science. The definition of life is literally the condition that distinguishes animals and plants from inorganic matter, including the capacity for growth, reproduction, functional activity, and continual change preceding death. Is the baby in the womb inorganic? Is it an inanimate object? Is it on the level of a rock or a chair or a clump of dirt? If so, how do I exist? Again, I am a living person. And yet, if I go back far enough in my own timeline, in the timeline of my physical existence, I will find myself as a fetus, quote unquote. So was there a time in my physical life when I was not living? Was there a stage of my life in which I did not have life? That's not only scientifically illiterate, but it's logically incomprehensible. And besides, if the view that life begins in the womb is religious, what about the view that life does not begin in the womb? This is the bait and switch you always get from these people. They claim that the abortion discussion is a religious discussion, yet somehow their own position within that discussion is not religious, somehow. Nobody can know when life begins, they say, which means that our assurance that it begins in the womb is a matter of faith, they say. And yet their assurance that it does not begin in the womb is not faith? And anyway, if we don't know when life begins, right? Because that's their way around this. They're saying, no, I'm not taking a religious stance on this. We don't know. So I'm saying I don't know. I'm agnostic on when life begins. That's basically what Sotomayor was saying. Okay, so if we don't know when life begins, as she says, isn't that all the more reason not to kill children in the womb? She says we don't know, but what that actually means is I don't know. Right? She's saying that she doesn't know. She can't speak for what other people know or don't know. She can only say what she doesn't know. And so she admits that she doesn't know if life begins in the womb. Yet she wants to kill them anyway. Even though there is, according to her, by her own confession, at least a chance that the child is alive. So she's willing to say, 60 million kids have been aborted since Roe v. Wade. According to her, there's at least a chance that all 60 million were human beings and that we have committed a genocide of 60 million babies. There's a chance of that, according to her. So isn't that like throwing a grenade into a dark room, hoping and assuming the room is empty, but not knowing for sure? If you kill someone in the process of doing that, even if you didn't know there was someone in the room, but you knew they could have been in the room, and you threw it anyway, are you guilty of murder? Yes. See, it's the pro-abortion side which truly acts on faith here. Theirs is a religious conviction. Roe v. Wade was a decision which imposed the leftist religious view with abortion as its highest sacrament onto the entire nation. They're not defending a medical procedure. They're defending their sacred ritual. And it's impossible to fathom, therefore, just the demonic fury that will erupt from these people should Roe be overturned. And that is a spectacle that we will all get to witness very soon, God willing.